各位观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看 JxJ 论坛，由我马健以及我们的好朋友 Jim Noteware 为我们一起讨论这个礼拜的时事。Jim, how was your week?
Week has been going fine. Personally, and I think when we look at the big picture, this is the first week in a long time that we haven't had any new real surprises. Most everything that we're concerned about is left over from last week and the week before. I'm sure if we look, we can find some more surprises. But
well, for me, I hate to say this, but it was a difficult week for me again. The financial markets, a lot of volatility, a lot of news, debt ceiling. I mean, a lot of concerns. It just seems never-ending stress level. I'm at a 10 for the past 6 months.
Yeah. I think it's your business, not really mine, although I watch it pretty carefully. I think what is bothering the markets is they're at a precarious high to begin with, but more importantly, they're worrying about the withdrawal symptoms. It's like a heroin addict that gets accustomed not only to the steady fix that comes in called government support, but the increases in the fix. And earlier this week, I think the Fed sent a signal that interest rates may start to rise again, and that is what triggered fears of a withdrawal. And asset prices will come right back down. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
Major driver. What's that?
Another sign the apocalypse is upon us is news today that bacon prices is soaring through the roof and it will not come down. Bacon is a staple. It's about as American as apple pie.
Yeah.
Now we know better than to eat bacon too often. It's a treat, for breakfast, maybe on a Sunday. Very rare to eat it. But if you tell me that even bacon, because that's something that every person has the right to enjoy. So if bacon is becoming unaffordable for some Americans, we have a problem. Now, speaking of problems, what's dominated China, Sino-US news this past week is the release of the Huawei princess, Meng Wanzhou, and the release of the two agents for the Canadian, but obviously Canada is just following orders from us. We know Mr. Trump did this, and now all the posturing has ended, which was predicted. But what, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but what really concerned me, and what really should concern the ruling party of China is that the way she arrived, there were, I don't know, hundreds of millions of people online. This is documented, watching her flight the entire time. There were untold hundreds of thousands of people. Who knows how many people waiting for her on the tarmac. The fact that she gave a speech, we're all read. She cried, saying that her nationalistic pride is at its highest. And, China has to know that any time you stoke the fires of, try to build up this, you could flip around and it can burn yourself too. Because once you organize things like this is why I always look down or I dismiss countries. It's a lot of South American countries do that. A lot of Soviet bloc countries do that, where you rah your national pride and your leaders and you make them godlike. That is, this has nothing to do with this democracy or socialism. That has nothing to do with that. The fact that you do this, because in the democracy, some countries do that too. But it is not sustainable. But you have any idea what's going on? What is your take on this?
On what? The Huawei situation?
On the exchange of hostages, essentially. The release after all the posture.
Well, two or three things. The lady, I don't remember her name.
Meng, her last name is Meng,
Yeah, the daughter of the founder of Huawei, who was like the chief financial officer. She was held in Vancouver by Canadian authorities at the request of the United States because the United States authorities alleged financial wrongdoing. I don't remember what all the charges are.
Iran's on the list, and Huawei has some dealings. And she admitted that she misrepresented it, but she never admitted guilt or accepted the prosecution. But either way, it was something that I mean, we can manufacture any kind of charges, if we want to get anybody in the world, honestly.
Well, probably. And then as soon as she was taken into custody in Canada, then the Chinese authorities found 2 Canadians over there and imprisoned them. The charges against them seem to be a little spurious, drug offenses or something. I don't really
made up, of course, but they were agents for the Canadian intelligence community.
Yeah, but I don't know whether they were doing anything illegal in China. I doubt it, but maybe.
But whether illegal or not, this is accepted. We have agents in other countries. They have agents here. These are documented. This should be some kind of diplomatic, courtesy. But either way, it happened. But don't forget that Miss Princess stayed in her multi-million-dollar mansion over the past 3 years while these 2 agents. She was under house arrest. House arrest. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah, but what a house.
Makes a difference.
As they call it, gilded cage. So.
I wouldn't trade places. I understand. Yeah.
No,
you wouldn't trade places. Yeah, with her. I mean, 3 years house arrest.
But I understand that part of the reason that she received such a hero's welcome when she landed in China was that the Chinese government wanted to make it seem like they won a major victory over the United States by getting her released, and the U.S. held her inappropriately, and it was a major victory for the Chinese authorities over the U.S. That's what I understand, but honestly, I haven't been watching that very carefully.
Yeah, well, I mean, for most of us, it's just a passing news, but for China, it seems for Chinese viewers is a big deal, which, you're right, here is not. And we all know it's political posturing. Nobody really won or lost. There were some things exchanged, whether it's environmental pacts or trade negotiations. I mean, this is all part of it. But normal citizens, well, they are not normal citizens, but people that are not in government are affected. And to me, it's a bad precedent. You know what come out of it that made me think, Jim? I'll tell you what it makes me think, is that I'm so glad that our legislative, judiciary, and executive branch are separated, that our judicial branch is completely independent, that will not give in to White House or any elected officials' pressures. And the fact that the judiciary branch decided this is not, is not an offense that can be prosecuted, and that, that is the one silver lining that we have, is that we still have that, and we have to try very hard to maintain that. Because if you try to influence it now and you think it's in your favor, it'll come back, turn around on you too. It needs to be impartial. It needs to stay impartial without giving into pressures. And that's I think out of most countries in the world, we have that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fundamental part of the rule of law, and it's one of the 3 branches of government and the separation of powers. It was really brilliant the way that our government was set up long ago by the founding fathers, and the judiciary probably has the most remaining respect now. The legislative branch has lost a lot of its luster, and it simply doesn't do its job, and it caves in to political pressures and goes like the wind. We can talk all about that. And we could go into that, yeah. But on one hand, when it comes to international level of law, I say we're independent. No, but local, right. I think even parliamentary forms of government do not have the strength of the judiciary like we do.
However, when we talk about crime, so I'm going to tell you a story that I actually is probably a huge concern amongst Asian Americans in Houston. Okay, so in our community, there's 2 people in our community. Mr. Lamb, him and his wife, they were first-generation immigrants. Their son served in the United States Army, did 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Outstanding citizens. This couple is in their 60s. They straight hand and foot and did very well. They owned, I think, 7 or 8 Subway restaurants, entrepreneurs. They became the business owners, very profitable. They live in a very upscale neighborhood up in the Northwest in Cyprus, gated community. Sure. This is the epitome of the American dream. I'm telling you why I bring this up, because it relates to what I said about Law and Order, what you said about Law and Order. Mm-hmm. 3 years ago, in 2018, they disappeared for days. Their family couldn't find them. Finally, when they went, they found them in their house, bound and murdered, with signs of being tortured for days. According to surveillance camera, 3 young men followed them. They've been chasing them for days. One of them supposedly used to work at one of the subways. They went through the gate, falling into the car, went in the house, tortured, beat them, murdered them. They could have just took the money, it was robbery. But they murdered them. And they caught them. And these 3, 2 of them were out of bond already. Remember our issue here in Harris County. Okay, we talked about it before. Yep. But see, what doesn't hit home until it happens to you. Now, Jim, this is the problem. This is a capital murder case, and it's without disturbing the case, because it's still, prosecutors were pretty sure. It's them 3. One of them just bonded out last week, $350,000 bond, so that he paid $35,000 and got out. Explain to me, how does this feel to the family that lost their parents, who they can never see again, who gave the son who gave his life to the United States of America to serve? What about, the 2 persons that died who could never enjoy their retirement? If they have $350,000 to pay for a bond, why don't they pay restitution? And, the prosecutor said, they understand this. The prosecutors, yeah. They understand, this the state laws are like this, or we have very generous, bonds to protect. But it seems like, a lot of what we say, which gets divided into political sense too. If you're a conservative or Republican, then you say you're against this. And what does it mean because you're liberal or progressive, you support criminals being bonded out? It doesn't work like that. Yes, we do have a problem with the penal system, low-level drug offenses, and one race being unfairly incarcerated. But this is capital murder. And looking in Houston in the last year or so, the numbers are up. We know that. And a lot of the perpetrators are out on bond. And I interviewed the son, Rich Lamb. He's going back to law school. And it's just a shame, because does it have to take people going to the streets to protest? Because we know certain special interest groups could go out there and then have national organizations to protest and to pressure the prosecutor or the judge, and, because it doesn't matter. Let's be fair. Law and order, but public opinion doesn't matter, because prosecutors need to get elected. The judges need to get elected. But Asian Americans don't do that. We're not organized to go and raise hell and protest and have ACLU or Reverend Jesse Jackson to represent us to ask for justice. So what happens to the victims? What happens to the innocent citizens that did work hard and paid their taxes? Why? Why is this happening? I'm angry. And
this is happening all over. In fact, just before we got on, I was reading a memo from a good friend of mine who was raising the same issue about the young man who, a high school student who was driving home from an Astros game about a month ago, and a road rage incident. Guy out on bond just shot him.
They followed him, for 10, 20 minutes to 3 blocks, turned around and shot him and drove off. Over what?
Over what?
Young man was murdered in front of his father, his brother.
That guy was out on bond too. I'm going to forward that to you, because there's some other interesting legal twists that a couple of people have come up with on this, and they're now blaming the state legislature for weakness in the laws that the judges have to enforce, rather than the discretion of the judge itself. So this bears some tighter scrutiny.
That is true. The Republican state house here in Texas, because in Mr. Lamb's case, prosecutors said the same thing, that, hey, the state laws needs to be changed. They don't want to do this, but they have to follow state, and which I don't understand that, because the state has always been very conservative, very right-leaning. Where is this coming from? Because you used to be able to blame and say it's Harris County because it's too liberal, and which is unfair also. But now how do we have this tort reform?
But if there is a weakness in the state law, and it's apparent and not controversial, that people do acknowledge the weakness, the state legislature is meeting now on a special session. And if the governor wants to put it on the agenda to correct the law, he easily can, and it can become a new law very, very simply and very quickly.
Absolutely.
If all those ifs, but those ifs are probably quite reasonable and quite doable. I'm just echoing something that I heard for the first time today. So I want to study it and understand it a little bit better and talk to other people who probably know more than me. And that's easy to do. There's a lot of people who know a lot more than me. So
there's people like you that feel that way. You know, the older I get, the more I know, the less I know, and the more scared I am. When I was young and brash, you know, but there are people that we know that thinks they know everything, and we know where that leads to. So yes, always rely on the experts, always ask. I would always go to you for any kind of questions on real estate, on investments, on being an entrepreneur, any questions on California. Actually, I can rely on you for many, many things. But I believe that you're the expertise on. You know, like I said again, your demeanor, the way you are able to control your emotions has been absolutely amazing. I keep repeating it. I think I don't say enough. Throughout last year's elections, throughout this turmoil, I've learned a lot from you. I go back and watch some of our shows. It's amazing that you can sit there and listen to this brat child, go off on Trump or whatever it is, and still can sit there and understand where this anger is coming from and guide me. And I never cease to tell you I appreciate that. Jim. I do.
Good.
Because I do see why. And, you know, and now I look at politics now. We're getting worked up by the media. And I could see now that I could potentially really look into a moderate candidate. I mean, it's being careful. We've swinging way too far to one side. It has to come back to the middle.
And I think it's beginning to. But back to your question earlier when we got started. There are four great big things going on in Washington, all of which are subject to effectively a test of President Biden's effectiveness on getting his agenda through. Two of them are the infrastructure bills, and two of them are federal financing. So,
what do you think about the shutdown? You think we're shutting down?
I don't think so. I think it's a game of chicken. The one that I'm more concerned about is what happens tonight, September 30th, the end of the federal fiscal year, which is the necessity to raise the debt ceiling, or we simply cannot incur more debt to raise more cash to pay our bills. The definition of, if you can't pay your bills, you're deemed insolvent, and insolvency is the definition of bankruptcy. And so I hate to admit it, but it means that the U.S., if it were a private entity, would be declared bankrupt because it can't pay its bills. And so
let's all hope that doesn't happen, because a lot of people will be left holding the bag. Look, everybody has a 401k. Most people do, a retirement account. This will affect all of us, you know, because of incompetency. And I can't even start talking about this administration. I'm fully supportive, you know, but the mistakes is mounting. And now I see that there are a lot of issues that needs to be worked out, and with intelligence and with consideration. To put it lightly. So,
but I guess I'm getting a little bit more optimistic that yes, we're approaching a crisis, but when you approach these crises, solutions come out. People figure out how to make compromises. They figure out how to step up and take initiative. There's just something about human nature that will procrastinate until you can't
until push comes to shove. Yeah, where you have to get it. I mean, I'm guilty of that too, you know. For years, you know, I wish I could. I have a to-do list of so many, and 1 year plan, 5 plan is just never ending. We just get to it, right, and we do what we can, and take time to have self-care. You know, I know we don't talk about enough for emotional support, whether you have faith or whether you have a place of worship, you know, or not. But self-care is important, and it comes to that to manage stress level, because it's hard. It is not easy.
No, it's not. It's
some of the best. I'm sorry.
The irony of, we have all this technology now, and the irony, and we have great medical science, and we have so great forms of communication. The irony of it is life should be getting easier, but for a variety of reasons that we can't fully understand or fix, it's getting more complicated. And
Jim, I can tell you, it can be a huge convenience if you use it right. But I can tell you, I have friends that, my generation that are already cutting off social media. And it makes sense because you don't covet, you don't need to compare yourself, keep up with the Joneses. And you don't be feeling more wanting because a lot of social media, that's what it is. There's a curated, created life that you want people to see. These so-called social media influence. For my children, I don't want them on social media. It is very scary. It's scary out there.
And I tell you what, I don't deal in social media hardly at all, but I have been watching the criticism of Facebook and Instagram. And that criticism is becoming louder and stronger, and from a broader set of critics all across, including people who are utilizing social media a lot anyway. So I think you're right. I think people are beginning to turn it down and turn it off. I wish it would self-correct. I wish the leadership of those organizations would self-correct.
These are for-profit companies,
But they really don't. They really don't.
People get confused. They profit off you, the user. They forget that you're being tracked, everything you do. Facebook changed the election 5 years ago. Now I look back, the irony of China, everyone's criticizing China for not letting Google and Facebook into their country. It has turned out that they made the right choice because this is what happens when you let the corporation dictate policy and change public perception and lead the way. A private entity should never set the agenda. And I mean, good Lord, look at what would happen. By the way, this is the same from someone that says, let's pretend that if I was extreme liberal and progressive, you would think media, and film, Hollywood, they're all going to be skewed. No, I don't want it to be skewed that way. I don't want to have the narrative pushed upon someone when it's one-sided. It cannot be that way.
No, it can't, shouldn't be. All of that. No, you're right, Jim.
Yes.
Right.
Jim, you look great. You haven't worn a tie in a while because of COVID. Now that everyone's vaccinated, still looking good. We will not talk about what you went to, but it was very good, influential people that you were with.
Very interesting today. Yes.
Hopefully we could have more insights, maybe to talk about next week.
Pick it up again. Yep.
I hope you have a good weekend, and we will definitely chat next week.
Definitely, Jim. Thank you. Okay, let's hope for resolution of these 4 big deals.
Yep.
And the country doesn't split in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you.